Hello, friends. Welcome in. It is the Matt Murphy Radio Show, underway for another day. Conveniently, my name is Matt Murphy, and I host the show until 3 o'clock. We hand off to Brian Wilson in the drive at that time. Good afternoon. Welcome in. Hope you're doing great today. It's gorgeous outside, a little bit more humid and a little bit hotter, but it's August after all. We can handle the heat. Before you know it, it'll be September and still hot. And then it'll be October, and then it will still be hot. And then it's Halloween, and it'll start cooling down. One way or the other, we've got a big show for you today, and I hope you join us for every single moment of it, whether you give us 3 hours or 5 minutes. We are absolutely appreciative of your time today. A couple of guests. We've not had guests in a hot minute or two, but we have a couple of guests to tell you about today. Stuart Parks. If you don't know the name Stuart Parks, it's a fascinating story. Stuart Parks became a January 6th political prisoner, and he served a time over in Memphis as a result of that. He is now out of jail. He got out of jail, I believe, a week or so ago, and he will join us in studio to talk about his experience as a January 6th political prisoner. We'll tell his story, and he'll take a few of your telephone calls on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Before that, we welcome Senator Adam Lowe to the program. Bell Kay says to me before the show, who's on the docket? Anybody I don't know about yet? And I said, yeah, there's actually one addition, Adam Lowe at 12:30. He said, Adam Lowe? I said, yeah, Senator Adam Lowe. He said, Senator Adam Lowe, I don't know that name. Where's he from? And I said, well, we're going to find out together coming up at 12:35 this afternoon, because I don't know a lot about the senator either, but he reached out to us, wanted to be on the program, and we've got several things we want to talk about from a state perspective, to include the recent elections and how that shakes up the makeup, or potentially can shake up the makeup, of the General Assembly in the state of Tennessee, and the two big issues going on right now involving education, one of which is obviously the possibility of school choice coming back to the state of Tennessee, or back to the General Assembly this session. I expect it will be the central issue in the General Assembly starting in January or February, whenever they start. And then, of course, this recent development involving parental consent, if someone within a school system is going to counsel medically or emotionally your child. We'll talk to Adam about those matters, amongst other things. He is an advocate, it's my understanding, of school choice in the state of Tennessee, and we'll talk with him about that at about 12:35 this afternoon. Your telephone calls, of course, as always, at 615. Why are they blocked? Why did you block them in? 615-737-9986, 615. I don't know. I'm not accusing you of anything. I was just asking a question. Pardon my tone, Bell. Pardon my tone.
You need to calm down, or I'm going to hit you with the tay-tay.
The tay-tay? Oh, I know what it is now. She doing concerts anymore?
Yeah, that tour runs through, I think it's middle of November.
Is she going to reschedule those that they had to cancel?
Yes.
Why did they cancel those shows? I'm not asking in an accusatory way. I genuinely don't know. Was there still an active threat after they caught those two guys?
It was basically done out of an abundance of caution in case that the plot was larger than they knew.
So they didn't believe that it was larger, but
they didn't know if it was or not, was the thing.
They could say that about every Taylor Swift concert. Really? Large gathering of people, possibility of violence, let's cancel them all. I'd be in favor of that, by the way.
There was a show in Germany where there were more people outside the stadium listening than there were in the stadium.
We saw it in Nashville, Nissan Stadium. That woman
and it makes sense that if you're wanting to do bad things, that's the kind of place you want to hit.
Look, I don't pretend to understand it. I don't get it. I don't like it, and I don't understand it, but I got to appreciate it. I mean, it's obviously, there's something going on there with the 16-year-olds and Dan Mandis, that they love that kind of stuff.
Me too.
Oh, yeah, you love that kind of stuff, too.
Love Taylor.
So you're saying 14-year-old girls, you and Dan Mandis, all at a concert together, and you're all singing along. Having a great time.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever explored this with you. I don't think it's a good idea, though.
Yeah,
I think I'll make you mad.
You'll make me mad, and you'll also bore the living hell out of the audience.
That's a double whammy there. So we're not only boring the audience, but we're making angry the person that controls the entire experience for the audience. So it's not a good idea. It's Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. Thank you for being around with us. Today is Locks for Trump Day 164. It's been 164 days since I declared my commitment to Donald J. Trump as the the next president of the United States of America. Obviously, that declaration was already in stone, but I did so by announcing that I would not be cutting my hair until we had a new president-elect. Understand, this is when Joe Biden was still on the ticket. There was a possibility I would have to grow my hair for the next 4 years. That possibility has gone by the wayside now, as it's Kamala Harris v. Donald Trump. They're all in preparations of their big Democratic convention, which they're very, very excited about. We'll talk about that to a certain degree a little later on during the show today. It is also episode 630 of our overall proceedings on Supertalk 99.7 WTN. You can view or listen to the radio show in a variety of ways, obviously on 99.7 FM on your radio dial from Southern Kentucky to Northern Alabama and all points in between. You can carry us wherever you go across the country, nay, the world, by picking us up on a streaming application of your choosing. Just go there, type in Supertalk, wherever you stream news or music or information or podcast. Type in Supertalk 99.7 WTN and take us where you go. We have our own app. We encourage you to download that, and you can have Supertalk at your fingertips. And, of course, there is also Supertalk TV, up and running, in part from noon until 3, thanks to our good friends at U.S. Pest, J.K., Erica, and the rest of the gang at U.S. Pest. Good people, fine people, and a great company at U.S. Pest, uspest.com. Today's episode, 630, will not be participated. The talk side of things on television, Bell K will not participate. On the radio, he does, but on TV, not so much. We call him Headless Bell as a result. But he does give us our titles, and I never know them until you do. And today's title, 630, is...
Matt Murphy's favorite president is Calvin Coolidge. Mm-hmm. If you don't know why, you need to do some investigation. Seriously. Libertarian lunch, noon to 3. No free lunches, but we do offer a discount.
The business of America is business. And I agree. Calvin Coolidge, known as Silent Cal, believed in a laissez-faire approach to government when it relates to, or as it relates to, general business. And with that in mind, Calvin Coolidge, yes, is my favorite president of the United States of America. And I would encourage more people to research good old Silent Cal.
Absolutely. He's the anti-Wilson.
I know. He was the, he was the remedy.
People always say, oh, my God, Joe Biden's the worst president and Obama's the worst. No, go look it up. Go do some studying. Woodrow Wilson was the absolute worst president this country has ever had. And Calvin Coolidge was the best.
No, I'm thinking. I'm trying to genuinely consider. Which one served like 30 days? I mean, he was pretty bad. I mean, from a time constraint.
Was it Harrison?
Had got pneumonia and died.
Yeah, he got pneumonia and died right after the inauguration.
And it was one of the Harrisons. William Henry or Benjamin, and I always get them mixed up. I think William Henry was the first and Benjamin was the second. I think it was William. Right. I think it was William Henry. But I'm not entirely sure. They all all of those between Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president, and then Andrew Johnson was 17, and then Grant was 18. And then after Grant, they start mushing together. There's a Hayes in there. There's a Cleveland. There's a Harrison in there.
It was William Henry.
There's a Chet. I mean, we had a president of the United States. Kids, gather on your radio. I want to teach you something today. We had a president of the United States of America named Chester. Chester.
This is true.
I mean, it's true.
We had one called Grover. We did. Twice.
Grover.
Yeah, he was the prez twice. Now, if we can just get one named Bert or Ernie, we're golden.
Who would name their kid? I mean, I understand it's a different time. I mean, but, Zachary holds up. Zachary Taylor.
Yeah, but that name's kind of come full circle. In the 70s and 80s, you never met.
Franklin Pierce. Franklin holds up. Frank. James B. I mean, but Grover does not hold up.
No.
And I don't know who would name their kid Grover.
My grandfather was actually named after that president.
Your grandfather was named Grover?
Grover Cleveland Link.
We don't do that anymore. I mean, do we? I mean, do you think there's you think somewhere in Rutherford County there's a Donald Trump Johnson?
Yes.
3 years old?
Absolutely.
Growing up?
Yes, there is.
You think there is?
Absolutely there is. 100%.
I mean, would it be wrong to name my dog Trump? I guess.
No.
No?
No.
I don't feel like we do much of that anymore. It used to be, the peanut guy, George Washington Carver, was named after the first president of the United States of America.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Calvin Coolidge, my favorite, I tell it all the time, my favorite Calvin Coolidge story is they called him Silent Cal for a reason. He loathed giving speeches, and he spoke even less during appearances where he did not have to give a speech, but he was required to give these state dinners, which he absolutely hated. And he was giving yet another state dinner, and his reputation of not talking during these proceedings obviously preceded him. And so there was a very chatty Cathy woman that was seated nearby him at a table, and she struck up a conversation with him, and he just sat there and listened and said, well, Mr. President, obviously your reputation for silence precedes you, and I have to admit to you that I have a little wager with my friends tonight that I can get you to say more than 3 words. And Calvin Coolidge said, Madam, you lose.
So that's good. Pretty brilliant. Then he got up and walked out.
And then he got up and left. And said, all you people need to get the hell out of my house. So there was a get-together last evening that we all highly anticipated. It was delayed for 30 or 40 minutes because of a cyber attack against Elon Musk's X machine. I've been calling it the X machine for some time now because Elon asked me to, and I'll do it, Elon. I try not to call it Twitter anymore, but there it is. So Elon and Trump spoke together. It was a Marathon Spaces session, lasting longer than Matt Murphy could. I checked out at about the hour and a half mark, figuring that I would catch up on the rest of it this morning, which I did. The biggest takeaway was that the liberals don't want to talk about content of the conversation. Instead, they want to talk about the idea that Donald Trump had a lisp. Donald Trump does not have a lisp. Donald Trump has not had a stroke. Donald Trump is just fine. Donald Trump was speaking over a speaker on a telephone. He was speaking into an actual iPhone. I think it was. I don't know if it was an iPhone or an Android. I'm assuming it was an iPhone. So regardless, liberals have become obsessed now that they have dispatched of Joe Biden. Has anyone else noticed their obsession with declaring that Donald Trump is mentally unfit or they've always thought he was mentally insane, but they are obsessed now with saying that Trump is too old, that he's mentally infirm, that he's not capable, all of the things that could rightly be said about Joe Biden that they denied until the 11th hour when Joe Biden was dispatched of by the Obamas and Kamala Harris, threatening him with the 25th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. I wonder if Joe will mention that when he speaks before the Democrat convention next week. Probably not, because they won't tell him to and it won't be on his teleprompter. By the way, did you hear, an aside, did you hear that Joe is going off to Camp David to prepare for his remarks next week? Is there any better example of why this guy, A, can't be on the ticket, and B, we really needed him to be on the ticket? He has to spend, he spent 10 days preparing for the debate, that disastrous debate against Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He's spending a week to prepare to deliver, 30 minutes or 45 minutes of remarks at the Democrat National Convention?
If it lasts that long, if it lasts 30 minutes, I will be shocked.
Yeah,
I'm giving you an over-under of 15 to 20.
Yeah, probably so. You're probably right. One way or the other, he's already preparing for it. So since Joe Biden has been rightly put to pasture, and by the way, the Republicans didn't put Joe Biden. We were going to put Joe Biden to pasture in November. The Democrats put this dude to pasture. Don't talk to me. Don't come at me. It was y'all that put him out. But because he was obviously too old and infirm to continue as president of the United States, to be honest, no one believes that Joe Biden is calling the shots. But he was obviously too old to continue as a candidate for president of the United States of America. Now, Democrats are obsessed with calling Trump too old and Donald Trump's mentally unwell. Donald Trump had a stroke. Donald Trump had this. Donald Trump's too old. It's sad to watch as they attempt to use the arguments against Joe Biden, against Donald Trump, and they obviously don't fit with Trump. This man will stand on a stage and speak extemporaneously for an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Well, it's like I said yesterday, they have to steal no taxes on tips because they don't have any real policies that are positive that people can get excited about.
Fact.
They have tried for, going on 8 years now to slander Trump and turn him into the bad guy, and they can't get anything to stick. So it's like, well, maybe we just try saying what they said about us.
Which is what they do.
Yeah.
Which, frankly, is what they did with if you think about it, that was the entire Russian collusion argument. It was Hillary Clinton that engaged in Russian collusion. It was Hillary Clinton that paid for the Steele dossier. It was Hillary Clinton that engaged in that détente with the Russians. It wasn't Donald Trump, and so they threw all of that back on Donald Trump. As if Donald Trump had all of this collusion going on, and for 2.5 years it stymied his presidency. By design, I would note. So, yes, they project like nobody's business, and they're doing so with Donald Trump. Some of the takeaways from last night, he gave a time frame by which he was going back to Butler, Pennsylvania. They talked about that. Elon brought it up at the beginning of the conversation, and it was not an interview. It was a conversation, and Elon made sure to note that. Donald Trump saying that the people were fantastic. Elon Musk rightly so noting that Donald Trump, you can't fake the type of bravery that Donald Trump demonstrated on that stage, and you just can't. Donald Trump, it was natural to him to get back up and want to demonstrate to the people at the rally and the people by extension of the United States of America that he was okay, and he did so. Donald Trump talked a little bit about the nature of the attack. He didn't go into the details that he did at the Republican National Convention. He said that on the issue of immigration, that it was interesting that they're trying to co-opt some of his policies into their agenda. He also said that we're going to have the largest deportation in the history of the country because we have no choice to do so. This is going to freak a lot of people out. Oh, my God, mass deportation. Well, if you're in the country illegally, what do Democrats want? The entire premise behind the Democrat policy of open borders is once you're in forever. And I would defy any Democrat to tell me differently. Right? Apparently that's the case because Donald Trump talks about deporting some of the 8 to 10 million. 8 to 10 million is the new figure just in the last 4 years.
One thing I think they underestimate is if you cut off resources and you demagnetize the country, a giant chunk of those people will self-deport.
Well, a lot of them will go back to their families. Yes, if you actually modernized the way by which individuals determine whether or not the persons that they are hiring are legally in the United. The problem that we run into is that a lot of Republican chambers of commerce don't want to do this because a lot of business interest lies in hiring illegal aliens. That is a fact.
But the left tries to make it sound like Trump's going to send people out with rifles and trucks and you're all going to be rounded up and put on boxcars. You don't need to do that. You just need to de-incentivize people from wanting to stay here, and they're going to get on a plane, a train, or an automobile and leave themselves.
Well, that's right. They'll go back to their countries of origin to go back to the people that they left behind, obviously, if they don't have an ability to engage in business and earn money here in the United States of America. No doubt about that. Secondarily, when individuals commit illegal acts, instead of putting them in American prisons, if they are illegal aliens from other countries, you send them back to their countries of origin in that way as well. And you incentivize those countries to take them by withholding American dollars, right? Many of the countries where these individuals are coming from, they receive assistance, financial assistance from the United States of America and South America and Central America. You incentivize the idea of them taking their nationals back by suggesting that you're going to withhold their money if they don't. And that's the way that you do business in a way that puts American interest first. And then you, of course, employ no government assistance whatsoever as far as we can for non-legal residents or non-legal people in the United States of America, right? If you're not a citizen or legally in the United States of America, you don't receive public assistance whatsoever. And and you demagnetize the United States, and you watch as some of these individuals go back. Some of them won't, sadly, because they have embedded themselves in certain metropolitan areas that are still, quote-unquote, sanctuary cities or sanctuary zones, the kind of which that Tim Walz appreciates so much. By the way, not that this is a big deal, and I know I've got to go to a break. Is it bothering anybody else that everybody's putting a T in that guy's name? It's not Waltz. It's Walz. And everybody seems to be putting a T in there. Am I missing something? Is there a silent T is there a pronounced T that's non-existent in the spelling of his name?
No, it's just
it's Walz.
Yeah, it's Walz, but the tendency when you see that name is your brain wants to,
yeah. You stick a T in there. Sure. Yeah. He's low T. Low T Tim, we'll call him.
No T Tim.
No T Tim. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, 26 after the hour, already late, as is my custom. It's the Murphy Show on Super Talk. Hello, friends. It's Matt Murphy, spending a moment telling you about a wonderful podcast called Heartland Journal. I know Steve Abramowitz, have known him for some years, and Steve does a great job over at Heartland Journal. They were formerly Mill Creek View, and they have changed their branding and their name to Heartland Journal. So if you're looking on social media platforms like X, you might look for Mill Creek View. But online, it's heartlandjournal.com, baby. All of the podcasts are up and running there, over well in excess of 200 podcasts now, from political figures and artists and commentators and other types of figures in and around Middle Tennessee. He talks about Middle Tennessee politics, and he talks about national and international politics like nobody else. Steve and Heartland Journal. Go by heartlandjournal.com to find out some of the news of the day and stay for many of the podcasts that Steve is engaged in. We love him over there, and you'll love him too. It's heartlandjournal.com. That's heartlandjournal.com for Steve Abramowitz and Heartland Journal. Hello, folks. It's Matt Murphy, and allow me a moment to talk to you about Safe House. Nashville Safe House is so good at what they do. Mark and his team, even before I went over to the shop on 4th Avenue South, he said, Murph, we got more safes than you can contemplate, right? And I was like, okay, sure, I've heard all of this before. And it's all they do, right? They do safes, they do vault doors, they do tornado shelters, they do biometrics. I mean, it is their focus of concentration. And then I went into the shop and I saw the amount of safes, and it really is difficult. Row after row after row, different brands, different varieties, different shapes, different sizes, something for everyone at Nashville Safe House. You need to protect those things that protect you and your family and your property. those would be your guns. Gun safes are always sales tax free at Nashville Safe House, thanks to our good folks at the General Assembly. I'll talk more about that in just a moment. But more than that, you just need to go and see the selection and find one right for you. They have professionals that deliver your safe. I mean, Mark likes to joke and says, don't let a crackhead deliver your safe, but it's true. A lot of these folks that don't sell safes for a living, they just have them in the corner. They have third-party people delivering your safes. They don't really know what they're doing. And do you really want somebody that you can't trust in your home? With Mark and his team, employees of the Safe House walk into your house, not anybody else, no third parties. So go by and see them, 4th Avenue South in Nashville. It's Nashville Safe House, online at NashvilleSafeHouse.com.
Good afternoon. It's 12:30, and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Sunshine, 84 degrees. The weather forecast is coming up. Ukrainian forces, they're taking their fight across the border into Russia. This week, President Zelensky confirmed for the first time that his forces are pushing into Russian territory. And a Ukrainian commander says forces have occupied some 380 square miles of Russian territory in the Kursk region. The offensive took Russia and President Putin by surprise. And ABC News contributor and retired General Robert Abrams, he outlined some of the reasons why Ukraine may be crossing the border.
I think there's multiple objectives here. First and foremost is to divert Russian attention from the east and the south, where Russia has had some recent successes. Secondly, it's a huge boost to the morale of the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian armed forces, and hugely demoralizing to Russia.
Back here in Nashville, the fire department here said crews were sent to the 2800 block of Dickerson Road at about 5 o'clock this morning to respond to reports of a commercial fire at a furniture store there, First and Second Chance Furniture. The flames were put out and no injuries were reported. At the scene, the store's owner told News 2 that he's owned businesses in East Nashville for about 30 years. He says he's run this particular store for about 5 years, and it's been going through quite a bit of vandalism lately. Fire investigators, though, they have yet to determine what led to the fire. No other information immediately released. That is the latest news. We have weather next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Hello, friends. It's Matt Murphy, and I want to talk with you for a moment about USS. That stands for United Structural Systems, and their August sales promotion. They call it their back-to-school promotion. Kids are out of the house, giving parents a little time to breathe as they're back to school, and maybe as you breathe, you've noticed that you're breathing musty or moldy air. If that is the case, that could be coming from your basement or your crawl space. And if you know, you know. And I promise you, friends, it's not going to go away on its own. You need to deal with it. And I would encourage you to call USS and ask them to come over to check it out to see what's going on. Do you need waterproofing in your basement or your crawl space? They do it at USS because that water getting into your system, into the home system, if you will, can also cause foundation issues. And that's going to cost you a lot of money on the back end if you have to repair that. Their back to school promotion is this: 10% off any job over $2,500. That's a huge savings, especially for some of those big jobs that perhaps you've been putting off, those jobs that aren't going to go away on their own. Plus, financing, same as cash options, are available with no payment, no interest for 1 year. You know USS. For 30 years, they've been serving Middle Tennessee and beyond. For 30 years, they have over 25,000 satisfied customers, and I encourage you to call them today. USS, United Structural Systems, at USSTN.com or 615-488-7855, 488-7855 for USS. Here we are, Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you. Thank you for being around with us. It's 12:37. Coming up in the 1 o'clock hour, right around 1:30, we will welcome Stuart Parks to the program. I met Stuart as a candidate for the 5th Congressional District seat that was being competed against by Stuart and Andy Ogles and a number of others in 2022. He was one of the candidates in that open seat that was created through remapping and redistricting. Stuart went up on January 6th, 2021 to be a part of the elliptical experience with Donald Trump. He was there for Donald Trump's speech, and then he went over to the Capitol, got caught up in that, and has recently served, I believe, 6 months in a federal penitentiary as a result of being what I consider a political prisoner of January 6th. We'll talk to him about that at 1:35. Right now...
Hey, I'm sorry to do this on the air, but can you move your camera to your left?
Why don't I just move?
There you go. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And you can always text me, or, you can do...
Every time I text you,
you can do whatever.
I usually get a message back that's like, if you...
That's an auto response.
Okay, I should have realized that.
We welcome to the show for the first time. I had a brief experience meeting him that I did not remember that Adam reminded me of. I was all in the zone of watching the Bulldogs whoop up on the Tennessee Volunteers at the time that we met, but I did briefly meet him at a tailgate. His name is Senator Adam Lowe, and he joins us in studio to talk about aspects of the General Assembly and the previous special session and things going on in the state, national news, and just general conversation. Senator, good to have you in.
It's glad to be in here.
I'm happy to have
nice.
you.
Is this real leather?
Yeah, that's pleather.
Who's the most famous person to have sat in this chair?
A lot of Nagas. Scott Sapicki. A lot of Nagas.
Pat Boone.
A lot of Nagas. Pat Boone.
I'm sober already.
Actually, hold on. Pat Boone did sit in that chair.
Did he really?
Yeah. That's.
We know the story with Dean Martin. Like he said when he shook hands with Pat Boone, his whole right side sobered up. Did you ever hear that? Hear that story?
The best story. What did he tell about Queen? He told a story about Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah. I can't remember what that is.
He got to meet Queen. No, I remember what it was. He said the second time, Pat Boone told the story on our radio, on my show. The second time he met Queen Elizabeth, he was in the receiving line and he's walking up, and this later on in his career, and he did the thing and he shook her hand and he said, "It's just an absolute honor to meet you." And she said, "Well, we've met before."
Kind of like you and I. It's
Wait.
What, that came full circle real fast.
You're Pat Boone and I'm Queen Elizabeth.
You're Pat Boone.
I know, I'm Pat Boone. You're Queen Elizabeth. Yeah, because he said he didn't remember meeting, and the Queen of England had to remind him that they had met previously.
Yeah, that's a little embarrassing.
That's pretty cool,
but that just shows you the depth of celebrity that you have, that the Queen of England recollects her interaction.
Well, I'll say this, that it was a sobering moment for me, and it always is, because I'm just a knucklehead with a radio show, right? Mm-hmm. But when you get an opportunity to sit down with people like Pat Boone, who's in his mid-90s, his mind is still as sharp as ever. He's got a memory. He's got all of these stories. And you realize that I'm sitting in front of someone that around 1954 was the most famous person on the planet. Pat Boone in 1954 was the most famous person on earth. Right before Elvis and right before some of that other stuff, went in another direction. He was still he's obviously been incredibly famous. And you're like, wow, that's got to be something. And
now it's like Mr. Beast.
right.
Things have changed so much. It's in a very brief amount of time.
Now it's libs of TikTok.
Yeah,
that's famous person. Give me a little of your backstory. Tell me where you're from and what led you into politics.
Well, it all began with a little twinkle in my father's eye.
Yeah, I bet it did.
Yeah, we won't go that far back. I served in local government in Southeast Tennessee and took a little time off. The voters gave me some time off, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. I ran for an open seat for the House back in 2014. That didn't work out. And it kind of boiled around this time, and Mike Bell, who's real popular back our way, was a senator, decided to retire from office, very, very well liked, and wanted to kind of continue what he had done in his capacity. Again, very well loved back in our district, and it gave us an opportunity to kind of step forward and say, let's try to be like Mike.
Mm-hmm.
We're from that era. We remember that tune.
What zone? What region do you represent?
Southeast Tennessee, north of Chattanooga, the toupee of Chattanooga. If you look at it county-wise, it's Bradley County, McMinn County, Meigs County, and Ray counties. So City Center, Dayton, Athens, Decatur, Cleveland.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And you've 1 term? 2 terms?
I'm 2 years into my first term.
Yeah? How's it been so far?
Glorious 2 years. Well, from what I understand, the last 2 years have not been a typical window of General Assembly magic. It has been rather unique. And so I have 2 opinions about it. One is a senator, which is quite frustrating at moments because I'm very policy driven. But as an observer, as a student of the setting that I'm kind of plopped into, it's been highly entertaining.
Well, y'all are boring over there in the Senate.
Not all of us.
I mean, okay, sure. Occasionally you get a nice fire emoji.
Well, we're not theatrical. We're not dramatic.
Bell saw what I did. You saw it? Fire emoji? You got it. Yeah, see, Adam's just getting right by it. Fire emoji. Randy McNally, fire emoji. Come on.
I know. Randy likes the emojis. I'm not an emoji guy. I'm more of a meme guy.
You're not an Instagram guy?
I like the quotes from Tombstone. I like to drop those on people.
Well, bye.
Well, bye's a good one. Yeah. Or, I know, let's have a spelling contest. That's a good one. That's one of my favorites.
I'm your Huckleberry.
Or the Shaq Shimmy. Do we remember the Shaq Shimmy meme where it's just Shaquille O'Neal?
Yeah, I do. No, that's been replaced with the Trump floss.
Oh, yeah, the Trump floss is good. It's the exit the room meme, right?
Sure.
I'm out.
Sure. Drop the mic and see you later.
My new exit line is, let me get my shoes.
Okay.
That's my new exit line.
So what about the Senate experience over the last 2 years? I mean, has it been a lot of the House stuff that has shaken things up in the General Assembly? I mean, I jokingly say you guys are boring over there. You're getting a good amount done, but I mean, the House is where kind of the calamity has been. Is that fair?
Yeah, they suck all the oxygen out of the room on a regular basis. We're content to let them do it. I mean,
you see the emphasis on that. The emphasis was on suck. I noticed that.
It was completely unintentional. Sorry, Cameron. No, they have drawn most of the ire and attention in the past 2 years. Even when you hear people talk about legislation, they tend to refer to the House bill number. Very rarely is it Senate bill. Very rarely does it come our direction like that. So people tend to focus on the House side of things. And I don't know if, from a mass perspective, it's because they feel a little closer to their House member since they represent fewer people.
Yeah, probably so.
And so they kind of funnel through that direction. But as far as the entertainment value, it was by all means the better chamber to have been in the past 2 years.
So, I mean, obviously, there are some serious matters that you guys have had to discuss and take up and consider, particularly with regard to Covenant School and the mass shooting that happened there, bringing some of that mass shooting violence close to home and a robust discussion about what to do about it. I did not, like some conservative. I mean, I don't consider myself a conservative. I'm more of a libertarian, but some conservatives were very concerned that Governor Bill Lee was open to the discussion of red flag laws. It did not concern me because I felt like I knew where the discussion was going to go. I'm not afraid of a discussion for a discussion's sake, but I felt like that Tennessee, as well as I know them in the 3 years that I've been here, that Tennessee constituents were not ready for a preemption of fundamental rights to advance the possibility of precluding one of these future type events. At the same time, you've got to consider public safety. You've got to consider, is there anything that we can do to perhaps prevent a future event like this? Give me a 50,000-foot view of where you are on all of this.
Well, you mentioned the public not being ready for a discussion. That's the side effect of a supermajority. The negative side effect is we don't have to discuss things. And take Common Core, right? Like, we just outlawed it.
Yeah.
Like, there was never any in-depth discussion about the merits of Common Core, how it falls on its merits. Like, many conservatives would have been very, very willing to engage the left and had that discussion publicly, but we never got there. So there's been kind of this culture in Tennessee, at least from the right, when you have a supermajority, you don't fall on a sword that you don't have to. You don't create drama that you don't have to. So if you don't have to talk about it too much, you don't. And that's a very politically astute, trajectory and strategy to use. But the side effect is when you get to a moment like Covenant, where you're forced to have the public debate. I mean, they're in the halls, they're yelling, they're protesting. The public is tuned into it. It becomes uncomfortable for people who've been spoiled by just shutting things down. especially when it's something so important as Second Amendment rights to conservatives in Tennessee. So I think that's what you saw. That's why the discomfort was there. And none of us in the Senate, I can only speak for kind of my microcosm of it all. None of us were ever really afraid to discuss the merits. Few know this, but my colleagues know this. I generated a 27-page political policy analysis, citations and everything for the caucus, the governor, during that time that analyzed all of the different elements of gun policy that they were considering nationwide, how it impacted public safety, all to the tune of kind of steering it back to how do we save lives, right? How do we save lives? How do we protect rights? And is there a convergence where you have to give up one for the other? There was a notion, you'll remember this discussion at the time, we trade liberty for security. We heard that a lot during COVID, you know. That is a blurb of, I think, Ben Franklin or Benjamin Franklin kind of uttered at one point. And there really isn't a lot of merit in the, empirical data that suggests that we have to do those things.
Well, and this is what I said at the time, and I'll say it again now, that if you can demonstrate to me in an evidence-based way that red flag laws have worked anywhere that they've been implemented, then I'm willing to have a discussion about what the trade-off is. But until and unless you can demonstrate to me that they've worked, then I don't understand what the discussion is about, right? That was where I was always at with it, is that they simply we have not seen where they have worked in the United States of America anywhere they've been implemented. So why would I trade my gun rights for something that has not demonstrated to work anyway?
Well, we had a unique situation in Tennessee. I mean, we could have looked at the gun right situation and the red flag issue across the nation, and everybody's is a little different. Florida had one, tend to be most misused. But in Tennessee, what we discovered is we kind of already have the procedures in place to act. Like, we didn't need new laws to do the things the governor wanted to do. The governor would say openly, I don't want red flag laws. What I want is these things. People identified them as red flag laws. And you can get down in the weeds on the semantics of it all. But what we discovered is our code already allows for intervention in moments where people are starting to engage in criminal behavior. What we did not have, and what we still don't have, is a network of mental health professionals to respond accordingly. There are very specific timelines laid out in code annotated in the state of Tennessee that dictate when the trigger has started with someone, when they're to be evaluated, when a court's supposed to rule, what they're entitled to in that evaluation, that process in place. We don't have the response network to do that, so it goes undone at the very inception of it. So there were several of us during that discussion going, whoa. Before we start manipulating laws around what we do with law-abiding people, which is kind of a caveat for me. I really get hung up. I'll always pass through that lens. Am I passing a law on a law-abiding person? Not a fan, normally, because it doesn't achieve the ends that we're seeking most of the time. But in this particular situation, it was really a cart before the horse kind of scenario. Like, we don't have an existing mental health network to respond to the laws we already have in place. What makes you think expanding those laws,
Well, and we have now learned as much as we can, because they won't release the full, documentation. But, I think Tennessee Star has done some great work in this regard, in that the failure was on the part of the psychiatrist or psychologist involved in this case, as much as we know, not understanding the process of reporting this individual to the authorities, right? So there were already triggers in place that could have been implemented that would have potentially, we don't know, but potentially could have precluded this. I want to move on because we're limited on time.
No,
Talk to me about school choice.
Okay.
I mean, were you a fan of the legislation that was before the assembly last year?
Yeah, which one?
Or this year, I guess.
Yeah, which one's the question? So what we have not had in the past year, and I'm joking, I'm pointing at the fact that there were several bills passed.
Sure there were.
None of them similar, like very diverse.
The House had like an all-encompassing, the House was something for everybody.
Yeah.
The Senate was a much more structured process by which we have this scholarship plan. It was $140 million, I think it was, something along those lines.
That's right.
Were you a fan of the Senate version, a House version, some of both? What?
Well, yeah, I mean, I had some fingers in the Senate version. There were some elements of that Senate version that were pretty important to me, i.e. open enrollment, the ability to use the scholarship from public to public institution instead of just public to private. That was unique to the Senate version. But in light of how that transpired last year, we never really had a good conversation about the merits of school choice. Like, we got way out in front on a thing called vouchers, and we had not established the case for why school choice is important. And I experienced this in my district when I went back home, and people would say, now listen, don't support those vouchers. And I would say, why? And you often could not get an answer. If I did get an answer, it was very frequently reduced to money. It was a very monetary argument. So I'll say this, in order to understand the merits of school choice, especially for Tennessee, I think it's important to understand the people involved in education, i.e. the teacher and the student. For 100 years, since John Locke and John Dewey, progressive public education has said we have to meet the needs of the whole child. And in the state of Tennessee, it's like many other states, we've established that you have a constitutional right to free public education. So we have to provide that public education. But for 100 years, what we've said... taxpayer-funded. Yeah. For 100 years, we have progressively, from the ESEA to the American with Disabilities Act to FAPE, which is free access to public education, free and appropriate public education, to inclusion law, to all of these things. We've said we have to meet all of the nuanced, holistic aspects for a student, and the public schools have to do it. So public school teacher, you have to be everything to everybody.
Hold your thought for just a second. You know how this goes, right? I've got to do this.
Do it.
I'm being told that we've got to do this now or never. It's 12:54. Our guest is Senator Adam Lowe. Can you stick around for another second?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Because we're right in the midst of this conversation about school choice. I'm very excited about it. We'll be back in just a moment. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. Jeff Eddy in Efficient Heating and Cooling understands that the choices can be hard when it comes time to replace your AC. You don't know when to pull the trigger on thousands of dollars of expense for your home. You need someone that you trust at your place of business or your home telling you that the time is now. Jeff Eddy's that guy. You can trust that he's going to tell you the truth about these matters. He's not trying to upsell you on anything. If you need a second opinion, as a matter of fact, he's there for a second opinion. Give yourself peace of mind. If your AC is not running properly right now, now's the time to go ahead and call Jeff Eddy. Get him out for a maintenance call, never charging you over $125 for that call. And then he'll tell you where you're at. If you have another year, if you have another season, if you have several other years, or if it's time to go and replace, they can do that as well. They're an elite pro partner with Rheem. Give them a call or go online at efficienthvac.net. Schedule an appointment today, efficienthvac.net, or 615-784-4424, 784-4424 for Efficient.
Sorry, we're running real late.
You're fine.
Good afternoon. It is 1 p.m. and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Mostly sunny. We're up to 86 degrees. Your weather forecast is coming up. Israel on high alert this week, bracing for a potential retaliatory attack from Iran and its proxies in the region. The U.S. is sending assets there. ABC's Luis Martinez says that those assets include a ballistic missile submarine.
It's all about deterrence. When we talk to U.S. officials, they say that this is all intended to send a message to Iran not to get involved in the broader regional conflict that the United States has been trying to avoid now for the last 10 months, as well as don't retaliate against Israel.
More schools around the U.S. are barring students from using cell phones during the school day. Now the governor of the most populated state wants all schools to ban them. ABC's Alex Stone, he's got a report from Los Angeles.
Around the country, many schools resuming classes right about now with new rules banning cell phones for students during the school day. From Ohio to Texas to California, efforts are underway to limit cell phone use on campuses. Now, Governor Gavin Newsom has sent a letter to schools in California calling on every district to limit cell phone use in classrooms. He applauds those that have already done it. Data shows test scores go up and bullying and social issues go down when cell phones are banned on campuses.
We now turn to schools in Sumner County, where teachers there will see some more money in their paychecks. Upgrades are also on the way to some athletic facilities in Sumner County. The county commission passing the budget last night after they met for 4 hours. The budget calling for teachers to be paid $47,800 a year and other support staff to be paid $16 an hour instead of $12. The budget also calling for $5.4 million to be added to an already $15.8 million budget to repair and build 2 new school stadiums. That is the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Hello, friends. Matt Murphy here for Tennessee Men's Clinic. Guys, I don't wish this on you, but half of the men listening to me right now at some point will experience a lack of performance in the bedroom. Now, I know that that's a personal subject, but if it's happening to you, do not whistle past this graveyard. Deal with it. And there are so many men that already have through the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Now, when I was first approached to talk about the Tennessee Men's Clinic, they asked me if I had a problem talking about this, and I said no. I think that it's important that men understand that there are ways to solve your issue. There are ways to solve your energy issues, and there are energy issues resulting in low T levels that act exterior to bedroom activity, like not wanting to go to the gym, not wanting to do yard work. I mean, just not feeling energetic like you used to. Don't just think, men, that, oh, well, I'm in my mid-40s, I'm in my 50s. That's the way that it is. It isn't the way that it is. Go to Tennessee Men's Clinic. The biggest complaint that we get, men say, I wish I'd done it sooner. And there are many different programs and many different approaches that they can take to help you. It starts with an appointment for you with a qualified urologist from one of their locations, one in Cool Springs, the others in Midtown Nashville. Give them a call at 615-208-9090. 208-9090 for our good friends at Tennessee Men's Clinic. For more information before you call, TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, spending a few more moments with our guest, Senator Adam Lowe. He's of District 1 in the state of Tennessee, a Republican senator down there in the, I always get confused, Adam. Yes, why are you waving? Why are you waving? Thank you. I appreciate you very much. I get confused when we talk about the southeast corner because that seems the middle of the state. But I guess technically that is the southeast corner of the state.
Yeah.
Because everything else kind of goes that way.
There's only a little bit else to go
from there. I mean, you can't go more south than that. And
I border Georgia and North Carolina. Well, I guess the old district that before redistricting was right up against North Carolina. But now there's one county in between my district and North Carolina.
My favorite fun fact since I've been here, and I've been here almost 3 years now, my favorite fun fact about the state of Tennessee is, and you probably already well know this, that it is further from Memphis to Bristol than it is from Bristol to Canada.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
it's a long state.
At the same time, I can almost spit from Alabama and hit Kentucky because it's very skinny.
Well, it really is 3 states when you look at it.
That's what they say, right?
Culturally, across the board. In fact, I used to tease Brent Taylor, the senator from Memphis, that when people would say, we need to build a wall, I'd say anywhere this side of Memphis is fine with me. And but he's grown on me.
Everybody says they want to give Memphis to Arkansas and be done with it.
Yeah. But Brent Taylor has made the case for redeeming Memphis, and I'm going to support him. I like what he's doing.
You and I were discussing the idea of giving parents more options with regard to schools and the schooling, and the possibility of creating what we called a scholarship program that would give parents ultimately vouchers. And is vouchers a dirty word in this discussion? Has it become one?
It becomes myopic because people have a very specific interpretation of what that is. And I think it's important for us to note that school choice is much bigger than vouchers. School choice includes charters, magnets. School choice includes healthy public schools. And we forget this. The public offering, a healthy public offering, an effective public offering is central to school choice. Vouchers is kind of a fringe issue. It is the pill you give in very specific circumstances. So before the break, we were kind of talking about that a little bit. It's the fact that for 100 years, we've said you need to educate the whole child. Well, when you get to the whole child and you get outside of the 3 R's and you start looking at the whole child, education becomes a very nuanced, specific thing as you move from student to student. And we have dumped the responsibility of meeting every need for every student on public education for too long. And the result in Tennessee has been that our teachers are the number one burned out profession. 85% of them leaving the profession say they cannot meet the demands of students in the classroom.
In the public sector?
In the public sector. So the question becomes, what do you do about it? So we can continue to make policies and dump more and more responsibility on the public school teacher, or we can responsibly say, from a school choice perspective, big umbrella, including public education, I don't expect public school teachers to be everything to everybody. And when a student is exceptional, either social, emotional, academically, behaviorally, we're going to give the free market a shot. And in doing that, what we're going to do is we're going to say parents have the option to survey other options. And we're going to eliminate wealth as a barrier in allowing parents to survey those options.
Well, let's put it this way. Adam, if I told you that when you go back home, back in Southeast Tennessee, that from now on, you don't get to pick your grocery store where you buy bread. You have one grocery store to buy bread, and everybody that lives in a district around that grocery store has to go to that grocery store to buy bread. Do you believe bread's going to be better or worse?
Listen, it's going to be whatever it is. It's going to taste the same.
Choice always. Well, no. I mean, the bread is naturally. If I'm the bread maker and I know you've got to come to me for bread, it is a natural occurrence within that system that the bread quality is either going to remain the same or go down. It's not going to get better. And we are trying to escape the natural way of things to suggest that if I have a monopoly on a system, that I can make that system better on its own. You have to insert something else within the system in order to achieve that goal. And I feel like that's what, and I understand that a complex set of legislation or bills like this, there's going to be something for everybody to hate. Yeah. But the overall concept for me is let's infuse something within the system that is going to insist that the system perform better.
Well, what we want to do is do what can be considered reasonable, okay? This past year, there was a lot of toxic talking points, people spitting around, the things to incite fear. You know, the easiest way to get somebody to be against something is to stoke them with fear.
Sure.
And the left in Nashville does a really good job of that. Even some on the right do. In fact, I got so sick of the debate, we're creating another entitlement. No, we're not. We're reforming an entitlement. We're reforming it with free market principles. That used to be a conservative concept. It used to be a conservative concept that when you have options, that free market makes everything a little bit better. So what I said we need to do with school choice through a voucher program in Tennessee, we have to create opportunity to unburden our public school teachers to where they don't have to be everything to everybody. We have to take what we're going to spend $7,000 a year as a state on a student regardless. It's cost neutral to the taxpayer. Let that produce the most effective educational route, optimal educational route that makes the most responsible, impactful adult later on. And in doing all of that, we can get to the money side of things, but anybody who's been against the voucher program, they always reduce a student to how much money they're worth.
Mm-hmm. I mean, right now, I'm having an argument on the membersnutrition.com super text line. I don't understand why you blowhards, that's me and you, Adam.
Yeah, no,
okay, sure.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you blowhards don't get this. You can pay your own money to send your kids wherever you want. Well, isn't tax dollars, that's my money too.
Yeah, well, they're making the argument for why wealthy people shouldn't have school choice. Because that's not true if you're under a certain income level and you don't have that opportunity. So it's...
Well, and if I'm paying money, I mean, the government doesn't generate money on its own to pay for schools. That money comes from the citizens too. Mm-hmm. And the citizens ought to be able to elect representatives that are going to best execute the function of educating our children through whatever means necessary to get the best results. And if that means moving money around, then move money around.
Well, and you've stepped into a place that further evidences why we need an in-depth conversation around the merits of school choice, because there is a point in personal wealth where the argument shifts. If you're below a certain income level, wherever that line is, it's about opportunity and choice. There are people who cannot afford, unless they have a voucher program, to have the opportunities to meet the need of their autistic child or their deaf child or their behavioral needs child or where they feel their child culturally fits. Mm-hmm. They don't have that opportunity. So it is about choice at that level. But when you get to a certain income and you have a certain personal wealth, sure, you have all the opportunities in the world. The discussion shifts towards redistribution of wealth. And if you're a liberal, you believe in redistribution of wealth. You're going to argue with me all day long that that's a good thing. But if you're a conservative, you probably have fundamental problems with people who are paying into a tax pool and not getting anything out of it. You probably have fundamental issues around the redistributed nature.
You addressed briefly, and in the few minutes that we have left, I want to circle back to it. Because there was an argument by the same types of individuals that were arguing the entitlement thing. that this was creating government bureaucracy where there was none, and that it would ultimately create the government takeover, or a dynamic by which the government would have the opportunity to take over aspects of the private education system. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that risk is already there. A new legislature can come in. Everything they're scared of, no further risk is created with any of this. If anything, the legislation in and of itself was self-limiting. It did a couple of things, some of which other states had not done, which I think were very healthy limiters. One was it established that any cost or expenditure was subject to appropriation. It wasn't automatic. So your costs could not escalate unless your legislature funded it every time they funded a budget. The second thing is, when they talk about that, they talk about bureaucracy run amok getting into private school. It was permissive. It didn't force anybody to do anything. In fact, I've got some legislation coming up this year that is going to further insulate what the rights of homeschool families, so they feel a little less afraid. And I'll just say, for those people out there who were stoking that fear in families, shame on you. Absolutely shame on you, because none of those things were true. You knew they weren't true, and you incited them anyway because you want people to be scared. So I'm sick of the fear. Let's have an intelligent discussion about the merits of school choice. If you disagree with those merits, fine, that's fine. Disagree on the principles and merits of it, not on the fear-mongering.
Is this topic A for the General Assembly next year?
Very likely, because it's a continuance from last Assembly, and there'll be kind of some refining of what should come forward. What that looks like, clearly leadership's going to have a big influence on what the legislation looks like, what comes out of the governor's office, but it's by no means a dead topic. And there's a lot of broad public support around this, even if people don't intend to use the voucher program. When you ask them if they think people should have one, in my district, it's like 76%. Say, I think people should have the option.
I am fascinated how this subject turned in a year and a half in the state of Tennessee, because in my 25 years of doing this, school choice was always considered to be a conservative approach, giving parents more opportunity to make certain decisions about the schooling of their children. And certain so-called conservative entities tried to create this argument that it was a liberal view of how to better schools, which it just fascinates me.
Well, that's name-calling number one on the right. The worst thing you can call a conservative person's a liberal.
Right.
Or a rhino.
Right.
A rhino, you know. And I don't like the term rhino. I've talked about this openly.
I get called a rhino all the time, although I've never identified myself as a Republican, which I always think is funny.
Well, it's a no true Scots. You were talking about Scotland during the break. It's a no true Scotsman fallacy.
Right.
You know, I'm a Scottishman and I wear a kilt. Well, I'm a Scottishman and I don't wear a kilt. Well, you're no Scotsman at all. It's an arbitrary measure of what someone is. And so I don't like it for that reason. And the other reason is people who fit the description of rhino tend to be the one who use the phrase the most.
Hey, Belle, how do you know that you're a real libertarian? This is Belle and I have this running joke. How do you know you're a real libertarian?
You are not a real libertarian unless another libertarian has told you you're not a real libertarian.
That's how you know.
That's true.
That's right. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same that goes with the rhino deal, right?
But that's the worst thing you can throw at somebody is call them a liberal. But, hey, listen, school choice is in the party platform. Republican in name, it's in the Republican Party platform. It was part of 7 speeches at the convention this year. Like, it's espoused by your banner-carrying candidate right now. It's important to a lot of people. It's free market principles in the big umbrella of education. It's not going to bankrupt public education. There is zero evidence that the legislature and conservative leadership in Tennessee will not fund public education. We are $1.8 billion to the positive to public education in the past 6 years. So when you say that to the public, you're not being genuine. And that's what we saw this last year was a lot of disingenuous talking points to alarm people, to alert people, to scare teachers, to scare homeschool families, to scare whoever into compliance with resisting a thing rather than sitting down and say, listen. So when people come to me and say, don't vote for vouchers, my number one question is why?
Listen, I love the conversation. I love the opening. I love getting to know you. I love you stopping by. The next time you're suckered into Nashville by mutual friends, come on by and see us. You don't even need an invitation. Senator Adam Lowe joining us for a few good minutes. Thank you so much for the time.
You're welcome. Thanks, Matt.
It's a great conversation from District Number 1 in the Tennessee General Assembly. There's Adam Lowe. We'll be back in just a moment, 20 after the hour. Hello, friends. It's Matt Murphy, and I want to talk to you about Your Health Plan Man. Pat Davis is Your Health Plan Man, and he understands, well, first and foremost, and I've talked to Pat about this quite a bit, he understands that the health plans and health insurance can be very, very confusing. It's almost as if it is by design. And because of the laws being what they are, have you decided to have no health insurance, but you want something? It's something, at the very least, to cover yourself and your family. Did you know that there are inexpensive alternatives for those without a health plan? Pat Davis and YourHealthPlanMan.com offer great alternative health plans that don't involve the government, that don't involve Obamacare. And these are conservative plans that don't cover things that you don't need, such as an example, abortion or maternity coverage. When you're 50 or 60 years old, you don't need maternity coverage, friends, and they can cover you with YourHealthPlanMan.com. Talk to Pat. He is your healthcare concierge. He is not bound by any plan whatsoever. He shops around and he finds the right one for you. They will treat you better at YourHealthPlanMan.com. Go to YourHealthPlanMan.com or give them a call at 855-4-PLAN-MAN, 855-475-2662 to get in contact with Pat Davis and his team at YourHealthPlanMan.com.
Israel remaining on high alert in anticipation of retaliatory strikes from Iran. Also, a most wanted fugitive here in Nashville for over a year is finally behind bars. We'll have that story as well as others at 1:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, the Matt Murphy Show. A lot of response to our conversation, particularly our conversation about school choice, scholarships, vouchers, however you want to call it, with Senator Adam Lowe, spending some good time with us. It's 24 minutes after the hour. 1063 says, if I have to hear you one more time say you're not a Republican, I'm going to puke. Well, I don't know that you know how many times a day I'm called a Republican, but I'm not a Republican. And I'm not a rhino. You can't be a rhino without claiming to be a Republican, and that is the point. Rhino, and this person says, rhino means Republican in name only. It's meant for those who call themselves Republicans but push for leftist policy. I don't know what you guys don't get about that. What I get about that is that I'm called a rhino by people like you, 1063, regularly, because I have divergent viewpoints regarding some of my conservative friends and where they are with regard to school choice or any other matter. I think for Matt Murphy, I don't belong to any club or any group. I don't belong to the Club Republican. I don't belong to Club Democrat. I don't belong to Club Libertarian. I believe in the libertarian philosophy of government, which is government serves best that serves least and only when absolutely necessary. Joe has identified it properly. Joe says, Matt, you're a lino. Well, okay. Joe, I accept the accusation. I disagree with the assertion.
That's wrong. You're not a lino because you're not a real libertarian.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
615-737-9986. Joel's in Nashville. Hey, Joel, how are you?
Good, man. How about you?
I'm well. Thank you for calling.
Man, first time caller. I just want to tell you that I very much appreciate your show, your attitude, and all you do for us. But I particularly wanted to comment on your guest that you had today. That was one of the most practical-minded, down-to-earth speaking politicians that I've had the pleasure of hearing on your show. And I just want to thank you for having him on there. He's a breath of fresh air in my mind.
Well, I appreciate that, Joel. I've not had the opportunity to meet Senator Lowe, and we had that chance. He mentioned that he was in town, and I invited him to stop by to get to know him. I want to get to know all of our representatives in the General Assembly, and seems like a fairly level-headed dude, from what I can understand. So, thank you.
You do a great job, my friend, and
thank you, Joel.
You don't know how much I appreciate you.
You're very kind. I appreciate you as well. 615-737-9986. 615-737-WWTN. Linda is in Davidson or Davidson. I mean, is it Davidson County, Linda? I don't know of a Davidson city. Where are you?
It is Davidson County.
Oh, okay. Well, hello. How are you?
I've been better, but my purpose of my call, and by the way, my husband was on the phone just before me. Joel is my husband. There is a mail carrier that is still getting paid who was videoed by an anonymous TikToker, and it posted and it went viral, who took our mail, all our neighbors' mail. He was videoed in his uniform with his little white carrier, automobile, whatever you call it, dumping boxes of U.S. mail into the dumpster. Now, this is a federal crime, and there is evidence, and all I get is a runaround. I call the FBI. They said, what is the name of the criminal? I laughed, and she hung up on me. I've called every Tennessee congressman. It's a federal issue. And I've called, and Bill Lee, you can't get a hold of him. Forget it. And the best response I got was from Senator Haggerty's staff. Andy Ogles, his people just brushed me off. And he's my congressman. Well, he is until.
Wait, Linda, I think I missed something. What has happened? Tell me what's happened.
Our mail carrier was videoed dumping boxes of U.S. mail into the dumpster.
Holy shit! And you have video of this?
It's on TikTok, and I can send it to you because my cousin sent me the TikTok. Evidently, it's video, but I'm not a member of social media. So I see his picture, and I see him dumping the boxes of mail into the dumpster. And this is not a victimless crime. We are victims. My husband, who was just on the phone with you, is the trustee of his mother's trust account. He has 3 siblings. The last check I believe he was expecting was a large one from Mass Mutual. Well, it never arrived in the mailbox because this carrier, who is still being paid by you and by the taxpayer, and I get really wound up. Joel is cool as he can be, but still being paid by the taxpayer. And I made a formal complaint. By the way, I was in the hospital in the ICU ER July 16 through 18 with bleeding ulcer, 2 pints of blood, transfusion. And 3 days later, when I could crawl out of bed, I went to the kitchen table to pay our bills. Well, there was one utility bill. And I told Joel, somebody's stealing our mail. Well, they weren't stealing our mail. This carrier was dumping. He was not delivering. He was dumping boxes of U.S. mail into the dumpster, and he was caught on video, and I can text you
Please,
email
Linda,
you.
here's the thing, because I'm a little bit limited on time. Please email me, matt@murphyshow.com, matt@murphyshow.com, and just kind of give me a synopsis of what you've just said here so I can kind of galvanize it in my head. And if you can send me any of those videos through any social media platforms that I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, just do that, please, because I want to know more. I want to know more about this story, and I don't have the time now, but I want to explore this further.
I'll be happy to do
Okay.
it. Matt@murphyshow.com.
Matt@murphyshow.com. That's MATT@MURPHYSHOW.com. Coming up in a moment, the recently released from incarceration Stuart Parks will talk about his experience in a federal detention facility after being unjustly incarcerated due to his activity on January 6th of 2021. We'll discuss it next.
Good afternoon. It's 1:31. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We've got sunshine, 84 degrees now. A full forecast is coming up. Israel is on alert, bracing for a possible retaliatory attack by Iran. But ABC's Marcus Moore, who's in Beirut, says Israeli forces have already launched their own strikes into Lebanon.
This is part of what we have seen, the daily tit for tat, the strikes that have been happening on either side of the border in northern Israel and also southern Lebanon. The IDF saying today that they hit Hezbollah fighters, killing some of them, and that they also took out an observation area, an observation deck that Hezbollah was using.
Back here in Nashville, a short pursuit led to the arrest of one of Nashville's most wanted fugitives late last night. Tyrone Walker, 30 years of age. He was wanted by Metro Nashville Police after being named in a grand jury indictment charging him with first-degree murder last year. According to authorities, the charge is related to the August 2021 shooting death of Cecil Holmes Jr. He was found dead in the Edge Hill Homes parking lot on 11th Avenue South after being shot multiple times. After further investigation, Walker was named as the suspected gunman. He was added to the police department's list of the top 10 most wanted fugitives in July of last year, and he's also appeared on the list multiple times since, but he is now behind bars. That is the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy, and I want to talk to you about bugs in your house. What is bugging you? Is it termites, maybe fleas, ticks? Maybe you have pets and you've seen some of those inside of your home or on your property. If you need to handle this, I've got the solution, folks. It's US Pest. JK, Erica, and their incredible team of qualified professionals will get out to your home and solve your problems jiffy quick. As a matter of fact, with the summertime ongoing, and August is here, and September, October, and bug season lasts a lot longer in the state of Tennessee. You need to handle this situation, whether it's spiders or ticks or fire ants or ladybugs or stink bugs or whatever it might be. They have full service pest control offered at US Pest. Besides all of that, I love this company because JK and Erica are great Americans. They believe in this country. They believe in the concepts of free markets and free enterprise, and they believe that they can solve your bug issues through US Pest better than anyone else competitively today. So find out for yourself the offer that they have. USPest.com. A free pest inspection is there for you. If you have bugs, they'll solve your problem. They'll kill what bugs you. 590-1260, 590-1260 for US Pest.
How close did you want me?
The last time we spoke with Stuart Parks on our airwaves, he was a candidate for the 5th Congressional District open seat, the newly created district, after remapping that eventually was won by Andy Ogles, but he ran a spirited campaign. And in the aftermath of that, we heard that Stuart Parks had run into a little spot of bother regarding January 6th. And since then, we have obviously followed his story with great interest. If you don't know the backstory, it's an incredible one, and we're going to share it with you now as we welcome Stuart Parks in studio with us to talk about his story and his experience over the past year or so. Stuart, welcome in the studio, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome back to freedom. For those who don't know, you have spent the last how long in a federal facility?
So I was in federal prison for 5 months and 10 days, and then had 20 days of halfway house. So literally about a week ago, on August 5th, I was released from federal custody.
Why were you in custody?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Why were you in custody?
I was found basically just a crazy bench trial in Washington, D.C. The judge found me guilty of 5 federal misdemeanors relating to January 6th, just simple trespassing, and also was being silly with the metal detector one. And even though Capitol Hill police testified at my trial that nothing was stolen from the Capitol, the judge still found me guilty, which is just mind-blowing. So I had to go to prison over it.
So you were in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, as so many other patriotic Americans were, expressing frustration with the results of the election in support of Donald Trump.
Yes, sir.
Tell me what happened that day.
So it was the largest crowd in D.C. history. I mean, people from all over were there, and there was a lot of excitement. Trump gave a great speech, and then we peacefully walked to the Capitol. And by then, it was just real nebulous. Because the intention why we're going to Capitol to hear another legally, peaceful speech and regarding the events that happened in the November election. And so, the bike racks were moved. We were led to believe we could go closer to the building, which we did. It was at my trial that I went through several lines of police officers peacefully, and they never once told me to turn around. No, you can't, go close to the building. So that's how I got to the building. And then once I got there, I went in through the doors. Doors were open. And shortly afterwards, met another group of police officers, and they said they made statements such as "We're here, we're with you, we understand you," and so forth. Very, inviting statements. And then, I was in the building for 20, 30 minutes, so forth. Didn't tear up anything, and just basically walked around, observed what was happening. And then I was silly, being frivolous with the metal detector wand, and I put it back and left the building. And then the FBI raided me several months later.
So you were one of the, I don't know how many people you might know, but you were one of the at least hundreds, if not thousands of people. We've all seen, and this is what I want to create. I want to create this distinction because we've all seen the videos of people busting out windows, and that happened in certain parts of the Capitol. And obviously, that's obvious that these people are doing bad things. But there were thousands of people that didn't witness any of that thought you had been allowed into the building. Did you think that you were being allowed into the building when you walked into the Capitol?
Yes, sir. There was never at any time that a Capitol Hill police officer, told us to stop, don't get close to the building. And then, they led us to believe we could go closer. And then once we were there, a lot of people like myself peacefully entered through the doors that were open. And many people have seen the videos of police officers opening doors for them. And so you're exactly right. I mean, there were people that had different attitudes that day, but the majority of people, like the grandmas, people's children were arrested.
Right.
We were just all peacefully, patriotically gathered.
Before we talk about your experience and everything you went through with the trial and your subsequent sentence, now, Stuart, can you understand why, and understand where I'm coming from, why you might, because of this misunderstanding, might have had to have been punished in some way, maybe a fine Or do you still feel like you didn't do anything wrong based on your understanding of what was going on that day?
That is correct. And I'm glad you asked that question because, I mean, there's so much misconception. I even ran into a lot of misconception even when I was in prison because the inmate, their information is so limited that they thought I was like just such a, just so hardcore. And I was trying to explain to them like, no, we were peacefully gathered. Like the cops let us in, but the inmates would not even listen to it. They were like, oh, that's just so hardcore. You going against the government. And I had to explain to them, no, we're
that's not a good idea. You should say, yeah, I'm hardcore, buddy. No. You don't mess with Stuart Parks. I am hard as rocks.
So that just is it's crazy. And I really hate to say this, but there was half the population in prison thought I stormed the White House. And I've even ran into people, while campaigning and just being out in the free world that people are like, oh, you stormed the White House. And it just, and I've gotten to the point where now I don't even correct them. I just, peacefully change the subject.
So you went into the Capitol. When you left the Capitol and you realized that there was obviously some of the videos indicate that there were some bad things going on that day that you didn't see because it's a huge place, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever think to yourself in the aftermath, man, I might be getting a telephone call here, or did it concern you?
That is, oh my God, that's such a great question because it was just, I will say this. So I'm in a famous photograph with Jacob Chantley. They call him the QAnon shaman with the horns.
Right.
And it's wild that, I just stumbled and I'm in the back and I'm in the photograph and there came an instance time afterwards where my co-defendant and I were the only people that hadn't been raided yet. And, you look at that, there was people, I wasn't the first group of people in Tennessee arrested, but, the writing was on the wall that, Stuart Parks' day's coming soon. And what really, was eye-opening was I was actually in Rosemary Beach vacationing, and I got a phone call that my co-defendant got bit by a snake. He was dying in the ICU, and the sheriff came and arrested him, essentially like on his deathbed, and handcuffed him. And I got a phone call, and, it was only a matter of time till, they were going to come raid me. And so it was harsh.
Well, because I can understand a government, and this is where I'm coming at. I can understand a government that would look at you and say, Stuart, you didn't realize what was going on, but there was bad things going on, and we're going to have to slap you on the wrist here. We're going to have to give you a fine. We're going to have to, give you probation or something along the lines. And that's not what happened at all. They wanted to put you, it's my understanding originally, they wanted to put you in jail. You walked into the Capitol building, didn't destroy anything, didn't hurt anybody, didn't attack anybody, and walked out. They wanted to give you 7 years originally?
They were calling for my head. And what's crazy is there's a lot of other people that were fined and so forth. Me, I only had to pay $95, and that was like some sort of court cost. And I didn't even have to pay restitution, which is crazy because like my fifth charge having to do with theft of government property. And basically the activist judge said that even though he basically said that I deprived the Capitol Hill Police, the owner of its use, correct, and the asportation is what qualifies as theft. And so I didn't have to pay restitution, which is crazy because most theft charges you pay restitution to the victim for, because it's taken away from them, they don't get it back. But yeah, so they put me in a prison that was formerly a medium, still had medium inmates, medium guards, medium, environment. And so I went from like medium low, halfway house, and then supervised release. I didn't even get a full graduation like, most inmates do. So, it was really harsh. Yeah.
So you go through the trial, and what was your argument in trial? Talk to me about the trial experience and what your arguments were and what was ultimately decided and how you ultimately got sentenced.
Yes, sir. So I agreed with my counsel that it'd be a wise idea for me to testify, which I did, and I told the truth what happened. And it's wild. Like the prosecutor, the U.S. attorney prosecutor said that no, because of what he's saying, he needs to be have an enhancement for obstruction of justice because he lied on the stand, and the judge agreed with them. And it's wild when I look at it. I was basically in a room full of Democrats and a guy with a hammer. That's essentially what it was. I was forced to go in there, and they made all the decision. And we did everything we could. Filed a motion of change of venue. I even waived my right to a jury trial. We did everything we could, and there was just no way getting out, and I got the harsh sentence I did. I mean, it was just mind blowing. Like, there were times where the prosecutors were kind of fumbling, and the judge would help them, like coach them into sticking something on me.
Did you feel like the fix was in? That there was no way that you were going to get a fair trial during the time?
Yes, sir, because it was really tough because, my co-defendant, he had pled out because they stuck him with, like, felony charges. So he was facing, like, 5 years, some crazy amount. So he pled out, got 3 months, got out, and the fix was in, definitely. I mean, there was no way out. And me, I'm like, no, I didn't commit a crime. So that's why I went through with the trial and fought, as hard as I could, testified, said everything. And
so, I mean, I've long argued, and this seems like a perfect opportunity to ask a man who has gone through what you've gone through. And by the way, you should not have been in jail, regardless of whether you were guilty of anything or not. There's no way you should have been put in a federal incarceration facility. At the same time, I've argued that the people that went into the building maybe should have known that this wasn't the process by which you get into the U.S. Capitol. Do you look back on that and have regrets about not asking questions? I mean, maybe it's an easy question to ask now, knowing the political prosecution and persecution that you had to go through. But do you look back on it now and think, man, I probably should have stepped back and waited a minute? Or do you still feel like I didn't do anything wrong?
Well, this is a great question, needs to be asked. I look back and it's wild. Like when I talk to other January 6th people, like you look, it wasn't like just Stuart Parks and his friend from high school that went in the Capitol. They're now arresting like almost 1,500 people. Like these were massive historic crowds that went in the building, and we're all like hanging out, we're laughing with the police officers, just like buddies. So to answer your question is I don't have any regret because the police let us in, their body language is there. And I even said this in the trial. And you got to think too, if you look at me, like I wasn't armed. The police were more armed than I was.
Oh, sure.
And I went through several lines of police officers all the way to the building.
And not once did they say, hey, y'all aren't supposed to be here. Y'all need to go leave.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
And so you got to ask yourself, like, how did I even get that close to the building to begin with? And then I go in, and then I'm in there not 5 seconds, 5 minutes. I'm in there for like almost 30 minutes. I mean, this is a question that the public need to ask. And then, I peacefully exited, went home, and, 7 months later, get raided by the counterterrorism unit.
What was that like?
Oh, it was wild. I mean, I woke up at, June 3rd of 2021 at 5:53 a.m. in the morning, and I'm, renovating a property in downtown Columbia, and I just hear banging on the door, and they're like, FBI, and they didn't even give me a chance to really like get out of bed because they just kicked down my door.
They kicked in your door?
Yes, sir. And they're in like, it looked like it was military gear, full body armor, pointing machine guns at me, and they're like screaming, stick your hand through the bedroom window so where we can see. So, I stick my hand through the bedroom window to the living room where they're in, and they do the normal. I complied, peacefully.
Sure.
And they do the normal procedure, handcuff me, and all I'm in is like shorts and boxers, and I'm barefooted, and they just, take me to like.
They don't give you any opportunity to get dressed.
Oh, it wasn't until like I get in the unmarked, blacked out Jeep out front, and by this time, I look down the road, and there's like long line of, the Columbia police is there. I mean, there's a lot. They made a scene. It wasn't like just
all there for you.
Yes, and my neighbors.
Stuart, no offense to you, but I think this is a little. I don't think this is a little overkill for you.
Oh my God, yeah, people. It was June 3rd. It was during the week. I remember people like nurses were out in the front yard, like my neighbors. I mean, they just embarrassing me. It's a huge disgrace. And I remember as far as the eye could see, there were like law enforcement vehicles there. And while I'm in handcuffed, they gave me my hearing aids and my shirt and my shoes and. They took me to an unmarked building originally in Columbia and they didn't, ask if I wanted an attorney yet, but thank God I had, some legal knowledge to ask for an attorney. So they're starting to interrogate me, and I said, may I have an attorney present? And then that's when they closed the file, re-handcuffed me, took me to the Davidson County Jail, and we were there before the jail even opened, so we just sat in the parking lot. And then thank God I was released on my own bond a couple hours later.
And then eventually you had, obviously, the trial, which we kind of covered. Let's take a quick time out, and we'll be back with Stuart Parks relating his experience. He was and is a January 6th defendant, and frankly, he had a political persecution with regard to the amount of time he had to spend incarcerated in a federal facility. We'll talk about that experience in just a moment as we continue. It's the Matt Murphy Show, 152, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hello, friends. It's Matt Murphy. Let's talk about sleep apnea and the problems that it can cause in your life. I know with personal experience, oftentimes sleep apnea is represented by snoring, and many people that snore have sleep apnea. Dr. Stuart Parks has taught me this, but he's also taught me a more important component to sleep apnea. You don't have to be a regular or loud snorer to have sleep apnea. I was not, and I was not sleeping well at night. And I asked Dr. Parks about it. He said, have you had a sleep study? I had not. I got a sleep study, and lo and behold, I have sleep apnea. I'm one of the 25% of adults that had it and did not know it. Now I'm sleeping better. I would never contemplate wearing a CPAP machine because I just don't feel like I could handle the hose and the mask on my face. Well, this is an FDA-approved oral device. If you think about football, if you ever played football, the mouthpiece that you wore in football, that's kind of what it's like. You don't notice it after a night or two, really don't notice it at all. It gently supports your jaw and helps you breathe better. You snore less. You don't have to have a hose. You don't have to have a mask. And with that open airway, you sleep better. As fall is approaching, more people have met their insurance deductible, so it's time to maximize your insurance. Do not wait. Call and make this appointment today to the Sleep Apnea and TMJ Solution Center. They continue to grow. Dr. Brian McLaughlin is now on board with Dr. Stuart Parks to help serve Middle Tennessee better. Go see one of these two qualified doctors. Brentwood and Murfreesboro are the two locations. Go to drposs.com. That's drposs.com.
Good afternoon. It's 2 p.m. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Partly sunny on Music Row, 86 degrees. Your weather forecast is on the way. Well, when people ask President Biden if he would attend a Donald Trump inauguration next January, he says, yeah, he'd be there. Here's ABC's Molly Nagel.
President Joe Biden suggested he would attend Donald Trump's inauguration if he wins the 2024 election. President Biden spoke with press as he left the White House on Tuesday. When asked if he would attend the ceremony if Trump wins in November, Biden said, quote, I have good manners, not like him. Donald Trump broke with tradition when he did not attend President Biden's inauguration in 2021.
Hostage deal talks between Israel and Hamas are still scheduled to resume on Thursday. It comes as fears continue to grow over a possible wider-scale war in the region. The White House warning Iran or its proxies could attack Israel as early as this week. ABC's Perry Russum has more in Washington.
A U.S. official says CIA Director Bill Burns is expected to travel to Qatar this week, leading the hostage deal discussions between Israel and Hamas on Thursday. Vedant Patel is the spokesman for the State Department.
We think that a ceasefire deal has the potential to create conditions so that hostages can release, so we can see an increase in humanitarian aid, and more broadly, create conditions for diplomacy to get the region out of this endless cycle of violence.
It has been more than 10 months since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th.
We now turn to some business news. Major layoffs have begun at one of Hollywood's major studios. We hear on that from Jason Nathanson.
Last week, Paramount announced it would lay off 15% of its employees ahead of a planned merger with Skydance, and the cuts started coming Tuesday. Among the biggest blows, the company shutting down Paramount Television Studios, which produces the show Reacher, Interview with the Vampire, the new series Time Bandits for Apple TV+, the limited series The Offer about the making of the movie The Godfather, and more. Paramount is looking to slash around $500 million from its books.
That is the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy, and I want to tell you about the Glock store and everything they have to offer. Now, by now, you know the Glock store is all over everything Glock, right? I mean, when you call yourself a Glock store, you're going to have every Glock known to man, and they do at the Glock store. They also have the incredible rooms, never lanes, shoot rooms at the Glock store, and we've been talking a lot about that. It's the best place to learn. It's the best place to buy a Glock. It's the best place to shoot, and it is the place to party because there ain't no party like a Glock store party. That's what they say. I'll tell you this. It's a great place, and I've been many times. It's a perfect place for all sorts of celebrations. I mean, you can have birthdays. You can have retirements. You can have corporate team building events right there at the Glock store. The parties include a VIP room with a full kitchen, dedicated shooting room, and instructors and shooting activities designed for every level of shooter. And they include all the ammunition. Get your party started by emailing them at party@glockstore.com. That's party@glockstore.com. So if you have a group of gun enthusiasts, if you are just a family and you want to have a family reunion at the Glock store, they can do it at the Glock store. It's my place to shoot. It's your place to party, minutes away from the airport and worth the drive from anywhere. Please go by glockstore.com or shoot270.com and contact the wonderful folks at the Glock store. I was sticking my tongue out at you, Belkay, for being nasty to me.
Oh, I didn't. What? I'm trying to make you look good to your legions of fans.
I look sexy. Somebody said that my name is right here above the skyline. Is that true?
Not in the two-shot.
Oh, okay. Not in the two-shot. Okay. And we have the two-shot up and running because we have a very special guest in studio. My name is Matt Murphy, and this is the Matt Murphy Show. Final hour starting right now on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We had Senator Adam Lowe on the show a little bit earlier today talking about some state matters, and right now Stuart Parks is joining us. Stuart knows his way around politics. He ran for the 5th Congressional District candidacy in that what was ultimately an open seat after Cooper decided he wasn't running after redistricting, and we had him on for that, and he was an unfortunate he kind of got caught up in the January 6th nonsense that led to his incarceration in a federal facility recently. We got up to the point where the guilty verdict was almost a foregone conclusion, sadly. We were discussing the trial. Did it surprise you when you got sentenced?
Yes, sir. It in a way, no, because then I was already found guilty. And
did your attorney kind of make you aware? I mean, were you aware of kind of what was going on?
Well, yes, sir. And we were still trying to get just ask the judge for home confinement, just something lighter. But the prosecutors were like, "Oh no, he told the truth on the stand. That's a upcharge. Raise his points to make sure he going to prison. And I didn't go to a camp with tennis courts, kind of like what you see on the TV. This was like prison behind the fence, and I was just so blown away. I'd never been in trouble in my life, and it was just horrifying. So,
I mean, naturally, I don't want to necessarily ask you to recount these bad moments, but I can only imagine if you. I mean, I don't know you well, Stuart, but you don't seem like a prison kind of guy. And so here you go, and you've been told that you're expected to. Your prison sentence was to be served in Memphis, correct?
Yes, sir. FCI Memphis, which was formerly a medium. Now, people like me before I went to prison was unaware. I was just shocked. I was blown away because I think I'm the first in my family to go to federal prison. So I didn't. All I had was my co-defendant to tell me what it was like. But he went to a better prison.
By the way, great. You got something to one up everybody else in the family at Thanksgiving, right? Like, no. I get to eat first. I've been to federal prison. Who's been?
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but he said something last segment about your co-defendant was bitten by a snake.
Yes, sir.
So I'm assuming he survived, correct?
He did. And I mean, this was a rattlesnake. He was in the ICU at death's door, and the sheriffs just come in, put handcuffs on him. Every time he had to go to the bathroom, they had to escort him to the bathroom. So, he was at death's door, and they still arrested him on his ICU bed.
Was he convicted?
Yes, sir. So, he had to plead out because that's why. And we were co-defendants. We were together. They tried us at the beginning, but we had to file a severance because they were going to slap him with false felony charges. And so that's why he, his trial and everything was done way before mine. So he went to a medical too, which in the prison world, again, for everyone that's not aware of this, medicals are typically better because the people that go there, have cancer and so forth. So they're more subdued, more focused on their treatment.
Sure.
Not prison, prison politics and prison life. Whereas I went to a former medium, now a low in Memphis, which is a pretty violent city. And I mean, it was just mind blowing. There was like murderers, child molesters, any type of crime you can think of. They were there.
How do you manage that? I mean, what's the game plan? What's the game plan there, Stuart?
Well, here's what the plan was, and I talked about this on Tennessee Star yesterday, which did a great interview. So the plan was going in that I was just going to lay low, just keep my head down, be peaceful, not say anything to anybody, and the guards take me in. And they released me to, let's just say, inner prison organization. And they're like, oh, he's a January 6th. And I remember seeing the inmate's face light up. He was like, oh, right on. So come this way. And they escort me to the inmate. So by this point, the guards aren't even in the picture. Now it's just me behind locked doors in the prison yard. And the inmate, he's got a grin on his face. And he's like, let me take you to your cellie. And I go in there, and I really did have a good cellmate for the first half of my sentence, or my time in prison, and he was from Tennessee. The prison world is so different from the free world. It's just shocking. But he was.
Tell me how that is. I mean, give me your. I mean, we've all seen the television shows. I mean,
and that I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, I've seen this on Shawshank Redemption.
Right,
all this stuff, and I mean it. And I really, I say this in the humblest of terms. Like we talked about, the information is so limited. They only had like Fox News and CNN. So they said that they were cheering on the January 6th crowd when that happened. So all these inmates are like, got their hands ringing together like, oh boy, I can't wait to see when they come here. So, they had good paperwork. And in the prison world, it's your paperwork is what you live by. And so there were people in there that, did inappropriate things with children. They were former police officers. They were snitches. And those people, like, oh my God, like I cannot believe just, what happened.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of honor among thieves almost.
Yeah, that's the term that the prison yard uses. And I was just blown away. I thought this was like sensation.
So there was in a weird way within. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in a weird way, there was respect for you that you didn't see coming. When you got there,
you're right. I mean, yeah, and I don't know how you did good saying respect. I think there was more of like a welcome. I use the word welcoming, and that's just how it is. Like your own demographics, and I hate talking like this. It's prison, so your own people.
But there's a separation, right? There's gangs. People run in tribes or in gangs.
I'm in prison, so
right. So you gotta.
I hate talking like this, but I'm answering your question. I'm in prison, and your people have to take care of you, because when I first came in, you have nothing, and poverty's like very widespread in prison, and the last thing they want to see is you go in debt. And that's another thing, debt will get you killed. And so other people giving me gifts, and I'm like, no, I'm pushing. When I first get in there, I'm pushing them away, like, no thank you, I don't need this. And they're like, no, they're like forcing soap and different things like food to get me started till I can go to commissary to buy product, because they are like, no, we don't want you going in debt to someone else. And they come take,
Right. You don't want to go in debt. I mean, that's the way the system works, right? You don't want to go in debt to the wrong person, because they might call in that debt in a way that you don't anticipate.
Yeah. And I mean, there was stories from other yards where people have been killed over a 48-cent stamp. And this yard that I came from, I mean, they had drones flying in drugs, people in the woods throwing backpacks in the prison yard, guards bringing in stuff. I mean, it was just mind blowing. Like, I can't even put into words. If only people knew how bad things really were. And like I said, the inmates were very nice to me. Really thankful that I had a good cellmate, because
What was day to day like? I mean, did you spend most of your day in your cell? Did you have a lot of time outside of the cell in the yard? You mentioned that. Just describe to me the average day.
Well, this is something that people need to realize. So this isn't the Davidson County jail where you have, the bars in the front where you can see through, around. I was in like a cell block where I only had like a tiny thin piece of glass to look outside and then look through my door. So, I'm completely bricked in, and, I didn't have like a call button in case my cellmate just all of a sudden wants to kill me. I didn't have that capability. So, and we went on lockdowns all the time. I remember one time we went on lockdown for like several weeks in a row, where it's just myself, my cellmate in a bricked in cell. It's about the size of a normal bathroom. And thank God we got along great. And I was like so sad when he got shipped to another prison. A lot of people say he was too hard for the yard.
I mean, because you don't know what you're going to get. And, you've seen the stories about, and you don't want to, and there's a negative, a real negative side to prison. And if you get a good bunkmate, you're like, okay.
Yeah, that's a huge.
I don't have to worry about any of that. And then now there's a new guy coming in and you don't know what you're dealing with and you're going to have to fight or whatever.
Yeah. And people don't realize, and I got along with all kinds of organizations in prison. There's people in there that may have killed 20 people, but the police caught them with a pistol and a little bit of weed, and now they're in there with me. And there's others there. There's people that outsmarted the BOP and may have done something atrocious, and they worked their way down to the low, medium, whatever you want to call it, where I was at. So I mean, you're right when you say you don't really know who you're locked up with. And like I said, I'm just thankful that I only had 2 cellmates the whole time, and it's just wild.
Did you tell? And Michael's a friend, and I know that he's done a great job with the Tennessee Star covering your story, and I've been following along as he related your story. And I think you told him that you got bitten.
Yes, sir. So I got bit 3 times while I was in prison. Now,
by an inmate?
Yes, sir. And this wasn't like, you're a Republican, I'm gonna bite you. It wasn't like out of respite. It was like a compulsive, kind of like a kid, like play bite. And like I said, I got along with other people, a lot of people, and I'm so close to getting out. Now, the thought when that happened, I was like, do I fight and, teach this guy a lesson and lose my good time? Because it's a miracle. I'm supposed to be in prison right now because I was sentenced 8 months from February 6th, which has me getting out October 4th. But I was so perfect in prison, I used the laws of Congress to, like First Step Act and good time, which means you get a 15% discount on your sentence. I was able to get out, July 16th out of prison into the Nashville halfway house. But, so it was wild. Like I got bit. And on the third time, I'm laying in bed and he bites me on the elbow.
Was this your cellmate
no,
at the
sir.
time, or
no,
was
sir.
just some other guy?
No, sir. This was another inmate that had been, he was in a 4-person cell and they just kicked him out, and I didn't ask questions.
Probably because he was biting people.
I didn't ask questions because, it's just one of those things you just don't ask. But yeah, he was moved to a closer proximity to my cell, and then he decided to just come in one day and he bit me. But then I guess he felt bad hours later and gave me an Otis Spunkenmeyer chocolate chip muffin, which is, it's just wild. I'm like, well, you don't have to, you just don't have to bite me, and this is fine.
Wait a minute. So
it's a different world.
This is perhaps the best story I've ever heard on the radio. So the guy bites you, can't help himself, it doesn't seem. And then later on, he feels bad because he's bitten you, so he brings you an Otis Spunkenmeyer muffin.
Chocolate chip muffin, yes, sir. And
did you eat the muffin?
I did because...
it's an Otis Spunkenmeyer. It's pretty good.
Correct. And that's what I'm saying. Like, the poverty's so rampant in prison, it's like having...
Everything costs you money?
So what they do is the government, the government gives you 3 meals. But they're kind of like what you talked about in the last segment, how like the baker, if everyone coming to him,
sure.
It's going to be low quality. I mean, it was like the worst. Someone said it was federal surplus food. I mean, it had the cookies was like moon rock.
So the food is not spoiled, but it's bad.
It's horrible. It's horrible. So then you have commissary, which, to answer your question, kind of like what my life was like, I thank God, my parent took over my companies and they would just wire me the profit, and there was people so precious sending me money. I was like, no, you don't have to do it. I can be self-sustainable. And so I would buy from the commissary, which is crazy because they know you can't buy anywhere else except from them, so they just jack the prices up. And
so if you want better food, you're going to pay for it.
Yes, absolutely. They do a 30% markup because they claim that whatever you purchase goes towards your TV and your computer, which they take the TV away constantly because they can't enforce. I mean,
so are there televisions in your cell, or is that in a group setting?
You're talking about the TVs?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So the TV room at this particular, all prisons are different, but this particular location, you go out of your cell and it's like a giant room and different TVs, and you have to sit where your people tell you to sit.
Okay. So, I mean, you seem like a fairly decent sport about these types of things. So, I've got to ask you. I mean, was anybody making toilet liquor? I mean, do they do those sorts of things in prison? I mean, you hear the stories about they're making toilet wine or the contraband and the drugs and whatnot.
Oh my God! I mean, I remember someone and I say this in the humblest of terms. I hate how it was set up at commissary because I would put my order in and everybody would see my order, so I would be like sacks full of stuff, and people,
you got a mark on your back.
Yeah. So people are like, oh, Stuart's got money, and in prison it's either stamps or you barter,
right?
And so there were, I remember again, please don't laugh, but I'm in a third world prison, so any type of pleasure is like amazing. So they had Smuckers, like strawberry jelly. So I would buy a bunch of them. Well, halfway through my prison sentence, they said, no, you can only buy one because there was an inmate making wine out of it. And
out of the jelly?
Out of the jelly. And so, there was stuff just being taken away from us all the time because the inmates would just outsmart the federal government. And, I remember one guy was saying, like, hey, Stuart, you want a Big Mac or anything from McDonald's? It'll be $500, but I can make it happen for you.
What?
Yeah. It was like
I bet after 5 months it would almost have been worth it.
Well, I'm trying to get out because I didn't want the guards to see, like, a French fry myself. That's all it took.
Were the guards fair? Were the guards?
So to answer your question, I was I was in there with people that were in prison with James Earl Ray. And so these guys were like experienced. They told me what to do, how to work the system.
They'd been
legally.
there a long time.
Yeah. So the best advice they gave me was just don't let the guards know who you are, which was tough because I guess due to the aspect of January 6th, like all the guards knew who I was. So it was kind of a weird. So I tried to stay out of the guards, but there were instances where I was sitting with the other January 6th guys in the cafeteria and the guards were like screaming at me, like, hurry up and eat. And, I'm one of these Southerners. Like, I like to get to know people, like, where you from, and, all this other stuff, like a good Southern meal. But the guards were, like, not having it. And it was the same way to other people. Like, they made you, like, force down your food to eat, and then they were like, get out, because the next...
was there an instance, and I understand this is a sensitive question, was there an instance where you thought, hey, I'm going to have to fight, I'm going to have to stand up for myself physically, or did it ever come to that?
That's a great question. Like I said, I live peacefully with all people from all walks of life.
But every once in a while, you...
Yeah, and with the biting, I woke up to a man's teeth in my arm, so, and I'm disoriented.
You're going to smack him, right? Did you smack him?
No. Well, listen, I'm so close to getting out.
You didn't want to smack somebody, and
I'm close to getting out because I had to get out. It was awful, and there was just instance where, and there was all right. So there was a time where someone took a bag of rice out of my cell, and me, I'm like, it's just $2 or $1.50. I'm like, it's fine, but it tore up the yard so much that something had to be done, and I learned, like, I was shocked. So, like, in the prison world, if you have bad paperwork or if you steal, like the honor among thieves, they're like, no, you're off the yard. You go check in now. So, I saw like a public beating for the first time, and I was just
the guy that stole the rice from you.
Yes, sir. And I was like, fellas,
other
it's
guys,
okay.
Like they didn't care. It wasn't you.
It wasn't
asking
me
for that, but they're like, he stole it. We don't care who he stole from, we don't care your react. He stole, and he's got to take a punishment.
And it's wild because the prison didn't want to take him in because he's all like, bloody, barely can stand up. And
wow,
he in the federal government, we were like, they were like, you got to go check in, and the federal government's like, in order to check in, you got to say who you're running from. And he just said, oh, I fell in the shower, and the federal government's looking at him like, no.
Yeah, because he's not going to snitch.
Yeah, you can't snitch. No, that'll get you killed. So,
right. Is that the first thing you learned? It sounds like that's the first thing you learned. Don't snitch, you get killed. You have to learn. Stuart, one of the reasons that this interview was so fascinating to me is I had an opportunity to meet you before. You are one of the nicest human beings I've ever met in my life. And the idea of you being put in that circumstance, I can say it now because you're out and it's past you. It's like it's a comedy movie of sorts. sorts. I mean,
people couldn't believe, like, even when I was like on the prison phone, like my friends were like dying laughing.
I mean, I'm glad you can laugh. I mean, it's just your personality that you have the ability to laugh about this now. But when you think back on it, does any part of this make you a little bit angry that you had to spend time in jail? I mean, do you think about it in those terms?
Well, I'm gonna say this: like, it's a huge shock, and a lot of people ask me like where I am psychologically. I promise I'm like, I don't have any mental illness. Like, it's just wild going from the free world to prison. And I'm gonna just be transparent. Like, I was good most of the time. I only cried one time, and I hate saying this, but like I called my mom, and mothers have that instinct where they can know something's wrong.
Yeah.
And my mom's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong? Is somebody hurting you?" And she just like made the tears come out, and it wasn't even like nobody was after me.
You told her the Rice story, didn't you?
Yeah.
You told her the Rice story, and
I just told her I was shocked. I was shocked. I was just shocked, being in prison, and then the inmates saw me, and I was like trying to, that's the last thing I want to do.
You don't want to cry
in prison, and the inmates like,
you're a mark if you cry, right?
Well, it's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's not like child molester status, but it's you don't
want that on. Yeah, you don't want that on you. Well, listen,
Yes,
Bell's
sir.
telling me we're out of time. Stuart, God bless you for what you've been through. Is there anything we can do to help you? What's the next step for you?
Well, the next step is getting all this, reversed. Because
expunged from your record?
Yes, sir, because I'm involved in real estate. I love it, and there's a financial aspect to it where, underwriters and future financial people got to ask, when they do background checks, they're always asking me like, what's this, 5 charges, and I have to explain to them. So I'm forever going to have to explain to them what that is. And I don't want to do that.
Are you hopeful Trump presidency, possibility of a pardon? I would think.
Yes, sir. So that's a very real, that my legal counsel and I have talked about approaching Trump very early in his, when he gets elected in 2024 for a pardon. Because
I like the way you say that, by the way. When he gets elected. That's good. I like that.
Yes, sir. Because I need this because there's criminal.
Look, America needs this.
Yes,
and
sir.
no offense to you, Stuart, but a long list of why America needs Trump to be president. You're on it, but it's not near you're not near the
Yes,
top,
sir.
right? You know what I'm saying? But I get what you're saying.
Yes, sir. No, but and I need it because in the prison world, like there's career criminals that talk about career criminal up charges. So if the a George Soros prosecutor comes after me again for this interview, they can now say, oh, he has a history of this. We're going to give him more time. So I have to get this taken off my record.
Anything we can do for you, let us know. We'll have you back. An incredible story. And I appreciate more than anything, Stuart, your positive approach to all of this. And you obviously have a wonderful family. You have a wonderful center. And we appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, there's Stuart Parks. We got to go. It's 27 after on Super Talk. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy for the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. Do you need your back cracked? I mean, that's the way we always used to say it, right? Crack my back. Well, they're not cracking any backs anymore at the Dr. Gill Center. They have modern ways to take care of your spinal issues. But here's the bottom line. If you have pain, and if it's spinal in nature, whether it's up on your neck or down in your lower back, they can assist you at the Dr. Gill Center. But it's not just about spinal issues anymore. It's also about soft tissue. With the red light therapy and the Class 5 laser system, additionally, with the spinal decompression, I mean, they can assist whatever is causing your pain. They can help alleviate that pain without having to pop pills, without having to worry about needles and injections for pain blockers, and without having to consider surgery. That's what it's all about. Avoiding surgery. Listen, when I was in my 20s, I abused my back, and my back never said a word about it. Now I'm 50 years old, and my back is complaining. I go to the Dr. Gill Center, and I want you to as well. Schedule an appointment today, 615-882-4838, 882-4838 for the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief in Franklin.
Good afternoon. It's 2:30. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Partly sunny, 87 degrees. A full forecast in a couple of minutes. Israel still on high alert, bracing for a possible retaliatory attack by Iran. But ABC's Marcus Moore, he's in Beirut. He says Israeli forces have already launched their own strikes into Lebanon.
This is part of what we have seen, the daily tit for tat, the strikes that have been happening on either side of the border in northern Israel and also southern Lebanon. The IDF saying today that they hit Hezbollah fighters, killing some of them, and that they also took out an observation area, an observation deck that Hezbollah was using.
Moving back here to Nashville, a short pursuit led to the arrest of one of Nashville's most wanted fugitives late last night. Tyrone Walker, 30 years of age. He was wanted by Metro Police after being named in a grand jury indictment charging him with first-degree murder last year. According to authorities, the charge is related to the 2021 shooting death of Cecil Holmes Jr. He was found dead in the Edge Hill Homes parking lot on 11th Avenue South after being shot multiple times. After further investigating, Walker, he was named as the suspected gunman. He was added to the police department's list of the top 10 most wanted fugitives in July of last year and has appeared on the list multiple times since then. That is the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Have you noticed your thinning on your crown or on the sides of your head or wherever it might be? Have you noticed your hair is thinning? Might I remind you that you don't notice that you're thinning in your hair until you are well beyond 25 and 30% of actual hair loss. As a matter of fact, the folks at We Grow Hair indicate that you can lose up to 50% of your hair before you begin to notice it. My hair was thinning a little bit around my crown, and I wanted to put a blanch on that because I got a very lumpy head, and I cannot have a bald head. And so I went to We Grow Hair. I'd heard their advertisements for years in the Nashville community, and I said, I need a part of this in my life. And so I'm getting their FDA-approved laser treatment to make my hair thicker and fuller and to prevent further hair loss. The gang at We Grow Hair said, Murph, you're looking pretty good for the age of 50, but we need to make sure that you're keeping it, and this is the way we do it with the FDA-approved laser treatments. It is a wonderful program. They have all manner of different programs for you to help with your hair loss. Whether you're just beginning to lose your hair or you've been losing it for some time, We Grow Hair is the only clinic in Nashville with all of the proven medical treatments and results. Their trademark procedure, the multi-unit hair grafting, and the ARTIS robotic FUE hair transplant procedure. Results are guaranteed. Let's give them a call today, friends, at 615-376-6010, 376-6010, or WeGrowHair.com. What an incredible story. 238 Supertalk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy and you until 3. We'll hand off to Brian Wilson at that time. Still plenty to get into. Obviously, we've got some questions for Kamala Harris as she continues on the campaign trail without answering any. I'm going to get into that in just a moment. Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize. Yes, ma'am. I apologize. A few questions for you, ma'am, as we walk down the conversation of the presidential race. Before we do, though, what about that, Bell? What about that? I mean, Stuart, I don't know that I would have the attitude that he has regarding his 5+ months in a federal prison.
I think personality-wise, that's his nature.
I think so,
is to be a positive person. But I 100% agree with you. If that had happened to me, I would be out for blood, figuratively.
And he has an incredible. It's just an incredible attitude that he has.
The thing about that entire situation that just annoys me more than anything else is, for an entire summer, cities were being burned down, and politicians on the left were just like, okay, go ahead.
Preach it, brother.
On your way.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Suddenly,
Kamala Harris included, by the way.
Then suddenly, government authority perceives a threat to itself. And it's like, oh, how dare you come into our house and tell us what's going to be? And then suddenly it's a bad thing.
Well, and for the longest time, and here's where Matt Murphy says, Murphy's not always right. Sometimes I draw conclusions, and sometimes I enter the arena. And we try to tell you when we do this, we enter the arena of speculation. And I did not understand fully, because we were shielded from this information, how anyone could have walked through those doors with, my perception was that even if you didn't bust it down, you walk through, their cops saying, hey, y'all need to leave. Y'all don't need to be in here. Y'all need to get out of here.
And they're just overwhelmed with people. And it's like if they had pulled a trigger on somebody, it would have escalated out of, it's ridiculous.
And that's not what was going on. That in many parts of the Capitol, in the midst of violence, yes, and unfortunate consequences resulting in frustration and emotion, yes. Illegal activity, obviously. We're not going to allow illegal things to happen at the U.S. Capitol. But this concept of they should have known better is kind of destroyed when you talk to people like Stuart Parks and when you see the video of officers welcoming them in, officers speaking, just having conversations with some of these folks.
Walking them around the Capitol.
Right.
And check this area out. Look over here.
Right. And so I don't suggest, and even with Stuart Parks, and it's the reason I mentioned it to him or asked the question regarding whether or not he should have been punished. I think someone like Stuart Parks should have been punished, because I frankly think that regardless, ignorance of the law is no excuse, right? And you can make the argument that I didn't know better, but at the time, you probably should have known better. I mean, you ought to know. I mean, I would know if I'm walking into the Capitol and there are no security barricades and there's no security that I'm going through, that something's weird.
But by the same token,
no jail
But by the same token, if the police are like, yeah, come on in, check it out. How you doing? What's your name? You want to see this section? You've been everything. Well, just stay inside the velvet ropes. Thank you very much. So
I get it. I know. I mean, and that's why I say that my blanket comments on this in the past have been every person should have known better. Every person should have done what was necessary to protect themselves. And if you went into the Capitol, you deserve some level of punishment. And now I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true because of stories like Stuart's. Now, his attitude about being in prison is just awesome. I mean, the ability to lay low as best you can and the stories that he tells, I mean, that's fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff.
I think as terrible as that situation has got to be, just from his positive-minded description, I think the only thing that got him through that is just his natural positivity that exists as part of his personality.
I mean, he said he only found himself crying once. I'm bawling like a baby every night and twice on Sundays.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Feeling
Get
sorry
me the
for
hell
myself,
out of here. I
sucking
don't
my
deserve
thumb.
to be here.
I'm that guy at the beginning of Shawshank Redemption. When they're trying to figure out which one's going to start wailing first.
I'm that guy at the end of Terms of Endearment.
So thank you to Stuart Parks for spending some time with us. Good conversation there. A lot of reaction on the super text line. And yes, let's remember, as Brian notes, that the only person that died that day was Ashley Babbitt, who was shot by a Capitol police officer for reasons unknown.
Well, didn't they shoot her because she killed another police officer? Didn't 7 police officers die that day?
Oh, that's obviously that's what we were told in the aftermath, and it turns out none of them were.
None of it was true.
I would not be. Joe says, "Come on, Matt. I don't think you'd be crying for you." Well, thank you, Joe. I don't believe that I would necessarily be crying. 2339 says, "You look like that guy at the beginning of Shawshank that's bawling his eyes out." Well, thank you.
I don't
2339.
I don't
right at the beginning when it's when Andy comes in for the first time and they're taking bets on who's going to cry first. And Red bet on Andy Dufresne. And the stuttering inmate bet on, he called him Lardass.
I got to watch the movie again. It's been so long since I've seen it.
And so when the lights, I'm Morgan Friedman, and I'm going to narrate the phone book. But he's narrating it, and he says,
in the Oval Office,
someone always breaks the first night. Because it's so quiet in the joint that someone always breaks and someone always cries, and they take a bet on who's going to be first, and it was the big fella. Fresh fish, fresh fish, fresh fish is what they chanted. I believe for people like Stuart, you fine him for trespassing, you put him on probation for a year or two, and you're done with it. Now, if you destroyed property, you stole property, you busted things up to get into the place, that's a different story. But that's not what happened with him, and that's not what happened with the vast majority of individuals who have been incarcerated as a result of Jan 6th.
And what about all these police officers that failed to do their so-called duty in terms of protecting the Capitol and weren't punished for anything, but the people that they were walking around and giving guided tours to were?
Mm-hmm.
That to me, that's
because what they have said is, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but we got overwhelmed to the point that we felt it was the best course of action to be nice or something. That's their excuse, right? And it's just that. It's a lot of excuses. Current Vice President Kamala Harris is making a lot of excuses why she is not answering questions. We are told through her campaign staff that she no longer holds so many of the positions that she has espoused over the last several years, particularly when she was a Democrat presidential nominee in 2020. And now some of those questions are coming home to roost for Kamala Harris to a certain degree, but she is pushing away from the mainstream media, any form of mainstream media conversation, sit-down interview, press conference, whatever. And so several questions come to mind as we wonder when and if Kamala Harris will be sitting down with a member of the press and what questions they will ask. For example, and National Review has a great article about this, and I'm pulling some of the questions because I like to give credit where due to National Review. One of the questions, oh, pardon me. Okay. Well, that cleans all that up. No,
doesn't that just inspire confidence when you hear that?
All right. So we're told, and by the way, Kamala Harris isn't changing her position on any of these things, which is one of the more fascinating aspects of this. She has not publicly defended her change of position. It's been her campaign staff that are coming out and demanding that we accept new positions on issues like fracking. So just to give you the list quickly, because I know we're running out of time, in the election of 2020, prior to her dropping out of the race, she supported banning fracking. She supported abolishing immigration and customs enforcement. She supported defunding the police. She supported instituting mandatory buybacks of assault weapons. She supported eliminating private health insurance and requiring everyone get on Medicare or Medicaid. She supported guaranteed federal jobs. She supported a guaranteed federal minimum wage. She supported guaranteed money, like a guaranteed income distribution. In 2019, she said she was open to expanding the size of the Supreme Court. Now we're told that she no longer supports that. As a matter of fact, we're told that she no longer supports any of those positions that I just mentioned. As a presidential candidate in 2020 or 2019, she said, we're not going to treat people who are undocumented and cross the border as criminals. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. Now, according to her position on the issue, unauthorized border crossers are illegal, making them criminals. Then which is it? She insists, her aides and her campaign staff insist that she was never the border czar, though President Biden clearly said that she was the one to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle, and the countries that help are going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks, stemming the migration to our southern border. So are you a migration czar as opposed to the border czar, or what? And on and on and on it goes. It merits a deeper discussion, but we're on top of these stories, and we patiently wait for the moment that Kamala Harris decides that she's going to face the music. She's not going to give a single interview before this convention, and she won't give very many afterwards, if at all. I would dare say that she has plans. If I'm to predict, just put this in an envelope and date the envelope, and let's see if I'm right. I predict that she will not give a sit-down interview with any media organization prior to debating Donald Trump in September. They're attempting to avoid it altogether. Remains to be seen whether or not she's able. More in a moment with Brian Wilson. We'll find out what's happening on the drive this afternoon on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy for a few more moments, welcoming Brian Wilson into the conversation.
I always feel welcome when I come on.
Well, I'm glad you do. How's it going, my friend?
It's going all right. Another great-looking day out there. I mean, I love this weather we've been having.
Little more humid, though,
a bit more, but it's still better than what we should expect in the middle of August,
All right, before I ask this question, can I make a guess? Okay. I'm going to guess. Knowing you, I don't know that you did it live. I don't know where to go on this one. My question's going to be, how much of the Donald Trump, Elon Musk conversation did you take in? I expect that you took in every bit of it, but my question is, were you able to consume it live as it happened, or did you have to take a break like yours truly?
No, I did the highlights later and went through it. And in fact, I've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 cuts here from it that I'm going to be sharing in just a few moments. In case you missed it, they were like 40 minutes late starting. Mm-hmm. They had some technical issues. They said denial of service attacks were underway, and one way or the other, it took them a while to get started. But if you missed any of that, I'm going to give you what I think are the highlights of that particular interview.
I think it's smart. I think it's smart to listen to Brian Wilson for the highlights as opposed to spin.
The other thing is, it's sort of hard to listen to Elon Musk sometimes because he's not a great interviewer. No, he's a brilliant individual, but not a great interviewer. So I've cut all that stuff out that doesn't mean anything and got you just the raw meat here.
I said last night as it was happening, I said, this man's brain is like a washing machine. It's just kind of spinning around and around. So is that first up on the docket today, Brian?
That's right off the top. And then we'll talk about, some of the best messaging that's out there is being done by citizens like you and me. And I've got a couple of really great examples of effective messaging that maybe the Trump campaign should pay attention to. It's all coming up on The Drive, starting at 3.
I absolutely love it. There's Brian Wilson. He's on the way next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN right after Jay Harper's newscast. Now, after we enjoy Brian Wilson and Mark Levin and some, Ben Shapiro tonight and then Dan Manis tomorrow morning, Chris Hand, before you know it, it's 12 noon and we're back for a Wednesday edition. Until then, have a wonderful afternoon. Hug your loved ones. So long, everybody.